Hello and welcome to the Agile and Scrum training session. So basically what I'm going to run you through is what is Agile, what is Scrum, what are why are we doing Scrum, what are the benefits of it, and how does it look like from a practical standpoint. So first you need to understand what the problem was, what was being trying to solve. So traditional development, the way it works was back in the day, customers would come to a company. They'd say, "I need this built." The company would would get their BAs, their business analysts. They would write down all the requirements from the customer in Word form. So it would be like big document. They used to call them BRDs or business requirement documents. That would go down to the technical team. The technical team would create a functional requirements document or a FIZ or some other name, or what's called ADDs, architectural documents, and so on and so forth, or ERPs, and all these documents take it to the customer would sign off. And this would be a big document saying this is the entire product, this is how it looks like, this is the way it functions. And it would take that whole process would take a couple of months, getting all the requirements down, getting signed off from a customer, and they'd try to write every single thing down. So from design all the way to what happens when a person clicks, all the negative scenarios, all the positive scenarios. It would be very, very document heavy. Um, and then the client, the company would start making the product all the way and it would take a couple of months to sometimes a year or more than that to finish the product, and then they would show it to the customer. So before that point, the customer would never see the product. After they're done, the customer would see the product. um, and basically what would end up happening is it would be something like this. And this is a very, very typical image that a lot of people show for this. The customer explains it in one way. The project leader understands it a different way. The engineer understands it a completely different way. The programmer writes it a different way, and so on and so forth. So this is a very typical example. And basically what it means is you can never define requirements 100%. I mean, even so far that we've been working on, you see there's a lot of back and forth between business and engineering and quality. Everybody has their feedback. A design is placed, and we all give back their feedback that to update the requirements. It's a very iterative process, the one we're doing right now. This is agile, the way we were doing it right now, where we're constantly giving feedback, looking like me being the customer. I'm constantly getting feedback on what you've built. I give you feedback. You again redesign and give me feedback, and it's a constant loop, very fast loop. We're not writing things down. We're doing it more on a show basis, and when we're showing work for it instead of actually writing it down. It's generally faster. So that's where Agile comes in. So Agile is supposed to be a more efficient model for this. Agile comes out from the term agility. So quickly maneuvering around things, quickly changing direction of the product, quickly changing decisions. That's what Agile is about, right? So it's not very document heavy. In the back in the day, when you needed to change one thing, you'd have to update all these documents all over again. So it was not worth it. So Agile is based on a manifesto. Manifesto means the ideology behind Agile, and there were four major points to it. So it was individuals, interactions over processes and tools. So that means is the tools would never dictate what the process. Rather, the process, what the people are doing themselves, the collaboration of the people, that would define the process and the tools. So we don't generally get heavy tools and all these things, and time checking and all these things. No, it's generally the people themselves, their own spirit, the culture, and their collaboration is more important than anything else. Similarly, working software over comprehensive documentation. So actually, not only software, just working elements of work. So a design, for example, instead of describing the design, we just build the design, ask the team for feedback, and then update the design. Similarly, we build the software, we get high-level requirements, try to understand it, build the software, get feedback quickly, and update the software. It would take almost the same time in building the software and getting feedback as much as just to write it down in a document and doing a whole FIZ review and everything. So that's why. Similarly, customer collaboration over contract negotiation. So in the start, it would always be, oh, if I find defects, or sorry, if I wanted to make changes, what is the CR process? It would be a change request document, for example. Instead of that, we just do customer collaboration. That means the customer or a client or the business head is generally a part of the meetings, and he's giving quick feedback on how are we targeting the market, how does this affect the different systems, what is happening right now. So the same discussions we're having right now, like organizations, how the student comes to the organization. All these discussions are customer collaboration that we're having. These are business discussions. Similarly, responding to change over following a plan. Again, once you get feedback, we try to get react to that feedback really fast. We don't plan that, in the next, after a year, we're going to do this, or we're going to update our project plans or hours. None of that. It's just very simple. You get feedback, you react to the feedback and show an updated design. So basically, Agile is a difference in ideology. It's not a difference in any. It's not a difference in how user stories or tools work. It's a difference in ideology. So we're always thinking small increments. We're always thinking of getting feedback as fast as we can. It's not like you get a task to design something and you wait a week and then you show it a final design. No. You should show it in the middle that, oh, I did so far this and so far this, and I need feedback, and I did this next increment and I get feedback, and so on and so forth. You don't wait a week doing everything from top to bottom and then show that. That's what Agile believes. For example, if we're taking the current example of the current product, one way our designer could work is take all the user stories, say after 1 month, I'll have all the designs ready and you can start working. That's one way of doing it, right? So he'll go through all the user stories, create all the designs, and then the last thing he'll show us, these are all the designs for everything you guys asked for, and now let's work. And at that point, then we'll all give him feedback, and we'll tell him, oh, we decided to change this, or decided to change that, or do this, or do that, and he'll be like, okay, I need another month, and I'll change all these designs and come back. Instead of that, what we're doing is right now small increments. So the designer goes and does one part of the product, designs it, shows it to us, we give him feedback right then and there, quickly change it, he updates the design, shows it again, and like that. So this is a very agile model, a very agile process, quick feedback. So that's what Agile believes in. So basically, this is, in layman terms, in a process flow, this is what it is. So basically, it starts with, on the right side, create something, gather data and feedback. So that's when you present, you gather data, feedback from the team or from the client, you analyze the feedback and you update. And then again, you create something and keep going through this, right? So this is generally the Agile approach. You don't need to document anything. You do minimal documentation just for collaboration's sake. So for example, the front end and the back end developers will generally need to have APIs documented for collaboration's sake, and that doesn't change very often. That's why it's being written down. Otherwise, designs, for example, instead of writing about designs or writing about detailed requirements of our product, we just built it and go for it. User stories also is like a very minimal form of requirements. It's just to help with collaboration, to help with communication. Otherwise, the older form of it was you'd have all those positive scenarios, negative scenarios, happy paths, and all those things. So we're not doing any of that. So it's a very, very simplistic process. So Agile then has practical frameworks that a lot of people adopt. So Agile is the thought process, and then there's it is a mindset, and then there's specific practical implementations of that mindset. One of which is Scrum. Kanban is another one. XP or extreme programming is another one. Test-driven development is another one. Pair programming is another part of it. Behavior-driven development is another one of it. So there's a lot of practical implementations of Agile. The one we're doing right now is Scrum. And Scrum has its own practical implementations. So the Agile manifesto is taken and it's practically implemented in different forms here. So for example, in Scrum, where we have minimal planning, and that's where we were talking initially, that one of the manifesto, collaboration, right? So a lot of these are dependent on collaboration. So Scrum is based on 4 ceremonies mainly. One is sprint planning. Sprint planning is basically where the team sits down, collaborates on what the requirements are, quickly goes through the requirements, figures out what needs to get done, make sure that they understand the requirements properly from the business side, and then they start planning on how we're going to tackle these stories, right? It's very minimal, very quick, and it's basically for one sprint. So instead of planning the entire product, you're only planning for one sprint. A sprint is generally a small time period, and I'll explain that later. Sprint is like 1 week. So you're only planning for 1 week. What are you going to do? And you try to understand those tasks properly. That's all it is. The next form of collaboration is daily stand-up. We've been doing it every day so far. Daily stand-up, again, I'll go through it in detail, but it's another form of collaboration where we're every day meeting together and answering a couple of questions, making sure the team knows exactly where all of us stand and what we're doing. Sprint review is then the end of a sprint. So at the end of the week, we show what we've built to the entire team. The team goes through it, sees it, analyzes it, and gives back feedback that, you know what, this flow, we've done it this way, but I think it'll be better this way. And gives that feedback, and that feedback is gathered. Sprint retrospective is an internal event where basically the team gets together and sees, you know what, we did this 1 week with all these processes that we have in place. How can we do things better? What can we make us more efficient in developing? And that's where the team comes together and challenges themselves to do better. So I'll go through each of these. So first, a sprint. A sprint basically is just a time period. It's generally anywhere from 1 week to 1 month. Generally, no one keeps it more than a month. Otherwise, it's too long. It goes into a waterfall then. So basically, every sprint or every week, if it's a week for us or it's a 2 weeks, we can still decide. Generally, for small teams, generally 1 week. During this time, generally, the team takes a small subset of stories or issues from the backlog, and that's what they're focused on. They're doing all their effort to do that. They're not looking at any other stories. They're trying to make the stories that they've selected as the best as they could. Even if you're done developing, you generally help QA. But as a team, we need to finish those stories. That's how it works. Sprint planning is, as I said earlier, the first ceremony of the sprint. What the team does over here is they gather together, they pick the stories that they're going to focus on in the sprint. They commit to finishing those stories at the end of the sprint, so they make sure that that's not too much work and not very less work. It's just enough work to get done in the sprint. And the entire team, that's all they're talking about is those specific stories. They make sure they understand those stories very well as well. So the entire flow, the design, the implementation of that, those things they try to understand as well as they can before they implement it. That's sprint planning. Next, daily stand-up. It's a daily meeting. It's generally supposed to be about 15 to 20 minutes, nothing more than that, where a team comes together. They answer 3 questions. What did I do so far? So basically, what did I do yesterday? What am I going to do today? And if there are any concerns or any blockers that I have. Even personal events such as I have a doctor's appointment or I have a family concern or I might be unavailable tomorrow, this is where it's brought up to the team so the team knows what's happening. The team knows when you're not available so that the team can plan differently. So for example, if you're not available tomorrow and someone needs some questions answered quickly, so they'll just ask you today. Or they'll say, okay, he's not available tomorrow, so I'll just postpone till the day after tomorrow. So that's what the daily stand-up is. It's a team coming together and quickly collaborating on anything that's required. Sprint review is the last ceremony of the sprint. And this is where the team comes together and shows what they've built. So they show the product. They show the design. They show it working. And what they do is they gather feedback entirely from the team and from customers. The feedback, again, becomes stories or bugs or issues or defects and goes back into the backlog. The product owner or the product vision guys, they decide on the priority. So maybe there's a bug that they found, but it's not that big a priority. Maybe we can go to the bottom of the backlog. Maybe it gets addressed in the next version or something. Or maybe it's something very urgent and it goes to the top of the backlog. And that's how it gets prioritized. This is how the product constantly evolves. It's through this feedback and then execute and sprint mechanism. Every sprint, it's improved. Every feedback, every sprint review, it gets feedback and constantly improves and gets added on. Sprint retrospective, as I said earlier, is the internal meeting where the team gets together and they try to answer 3 questions, right? What did we do good and should keep doing? So for example, did we do a new tool? Did we introduce a new process? Did you like something of another team member? Appreciate another team member. Hey, so and so worked late hours, and I really appreciate it. Thank you. It really helped me. And you want to appreciate your team at the same time. And if there's something that's bad that's happening, so for example, I can't work because my internet doesn't work. A PDCL isn't operable, or something like that. You want to bring that up to the team as well. We need to improve on our internet, or we need to improve on our tool. I don't like HipChat. I like Slack better because HipChat isn't allowing me to do this operations, and I need to do that to work better or be efficient. So that's where you want to bring these things up. Similarly, what could we improve? Is there anything that we can improve? Can we improve on our stand-up time? Can we improve on our softwares, on our tools? Can we improve on our process? Can we improve on the people, the team? Can we hire someone? All these things come into sprint retrospective. At one glance, this is how it looks like. So on the left, this is how the entire Scrum framework adds up. On the left, you have a product owner. The product owner goes and writes user stories in the backlog. Then comes a sprint planning meeting where the team selects, again, the topmost issues of the backlog that they think they can complete, because you always want to aim at the backlog from top to bottom. So the team looks from the top and goes down and sees where they can draw the line as what they can finish in this sprint. They pick those and put those in a sprint. Those user stories are then broken down into tasks. So each user story, for example, has a design task, or a architecture task, or a QA task, or a development task. Those tasks are added to it. In one sprint, all those tasks are completed. Every day of the sprint, the team gets together and does a daily stand-up. At the end, at the end of it, what you see on the right side, the finished product is brought from the sprint. It's shown to the team, and the feedback is gathered, which goes back into the backlog. At the same time, this team gets together and does a retrospective and sees what can we improve. And this is basically Scrum all over. So if you look at it, it's actually a process of development. It has nothing to do with low-level features or low-level requirements or nothing. It's just an overall process of development, which will help us greatly.